Even in the front of the house, we have a bucket to capture water from gully washers because the standard 3-inch gutters on a typical house cannot contain all the water coming off the roof. Without hesitation, I believe the most critical function on the homestead is the capture and sequestration of water. We have the water barrels, we have a micro pond, we have more IBC containers planned for the homestead. I even had an idea to split a standard PVC pipe lengthwise, attach it to the top of the chicken coop in an attempt to capture water through the open ridge vent into a water barrel for chicken consumption. From the rabbit hutch roof, I've diverted water from the roof into a catchment system that has a tube attached to the back that allows the rabbits to drink from a water nipple. For convenient drinking water on the homestead, we'll replace this with the Berkey Light water filter. At the entry to the homestead, neighbors drop their leaves and the arborist dumps the wood chips, 14 yards of it currently. Since water moisture in the garden is so critical, everything is covered with mulch. Here at the end of the kitchen garden as it slopes down toward the north, I plan to install a rice paddy which will be protected on 3 sides by the fence and the greenhouse. As excess rainwater drains from both the rabbit and chicken paddocks, I'm directing the water into a fertigation canal to direct the nutrient water downhill into the kitchen garden. To enhance biological sources on the homestead, we'll combine these 2 ingredients with food scraps into this 2-bucket design, and it will create a biologically enhanced liquid and immediately available through a spigot at the bottom of the bucket. All of the plants in the kitchen garden and greenhouse received a mixture of azomite, superchar, and not seen here, Organic Solutions premium worm castings to increase yield for this year. We save natural gas resources by heating water inside of a solar oven. I rigged up a simple system outside to wash and scrub the fodder trays. And I'm using rain barrel water which is attached directly to this hose behind the fence. The water is on, and when I lower it down to the trays, the water flows. When I put it back up on the open eye hook higher than the trays, it stops the water flow. Solar power is used to power both fan and a DC water heating element attached to one of the water barrels. In the backyard, it was covered pretty densely with leaves from the fall, but 40 to 60 mile an hour windstorm for about 4 days pushed all the leaves, or most of them, all the way to the fence line, which makes them a lot easier to rake and collect. The chicken coop contains 3 nest boxes, and I've angled the laying area so that the eggs roll down to the back through a slot in the back and then drop down below to have easy access to the eggs. This container captures the rabbit droppings that fall from this angled screen material mounted below the rabbit hutch area above. To help save time and energy loading these wood chips into the pawl, I simply brace the handle when I tilt it up and then I can drag the wood chips off the top pile right into the paw itself, thus saving a lot of wear and tear on my back. To protect the animals from aerial predators, vinyl covered metal clothesline is placed at the top of each of the paddocks, and it seems to discourage the hawks from attacking from the air. We're going on 4 months now and no loss of animals from aerial pressure whatsoever. One wisteria vine climbing and growing ever higher in front of the south-facing portion of the house. I'll extend those tendrils across the bay window in the front using invisible fishing line to provide additional shade to the house in the summer. I save all the eggshells and dry them out in the sun, crush them up later and feed them back to the chickens to supplement their food supply, especially for calcium. To supplement the rabbit feed in the wintertime, I use the cuttings from the fruit trees and cut them into small pieces so that it can eat the bark. Some of the trees I've been getting them lately are sweet almond, peach, apple, and pear. I use chop and drop of other vegetation in the area under the hazelnuts for fertilization and moisture retention. Use coffee grounds, cuttings and diggings from the garden, and other vegetable scraps from the kitchen are being dumped to make terrace beds as they slope down toward the north. Pole beans are taking advantage of the vertical space provided by the fig forest. Taking advantage of additional space on the aluminum fence, we have beans growing along the entire length. This is a red raspberry trained on a trellis up the side of the greenhouse to provide shade for the greenhouse and food for the homestead. Within Zone 2 at the edge of the driveway, goji berry and hardy kiwi take advantage of the 6-foot fence. I attended an earthworks course in Tennessee recently and learned that if fig branches are secured horizontally, more production will come from the branch. These are recycled milk containers used to hold cuttings for propagation of plants such as purple tree collards. Saving seeds from the massive bok choy plant in the greenhouse from earlier this spring. This raspberry planted in front of the greenhouse is sufficiently large now to begin propagating through tip layering into the ground and extend it into this bed so it can provide more vertical growing area for it as it goes up the greenhouse. The kitchen garden will receive the most care and attention and resources, as it is the most important element on the homestead. Instead of moving this large leaf pile deposited by the neighbors at the top of the property, I placed red wiggler worms in the middle of it in an attempt to create a large pile of worm castings. This chicken element produces eggs, controls bugs, and prepares large areas for new planting areas. Soon I'll be undersowing the kitchen garden rows with buckwheat and oilseed or daikon radish to both add nutrient, cover, and to help with soil compaction throughout these rows. Later in the fall and winter, I'll be sowing annual rye and clover as a cover crop all the way through spring. Here at the beginning of summer, additional plant materials in the greenhouse awaiting transplant to the kitchen garden as time permits. One of the two keyhole laneways in the greenhouse doubles as a refuse pit for garden cuttings to feed the worms and the plants. This edible bamboo on the edge of Zone 3 provides edible shoots, canes for projects around the homestead, shelter for animals and birds, and provides a windbreak from the strong northern winds down in the valley. In the south-facing part of the homestead is a bed of skirret, crosney, and legume-fixing seaberry. In this Zone 1 edge next to the wooden fence, a Japanese hawthorn is surrounded by companion plants such as black locust, honey locust, and several berry plants to extend the forest into the open areas. This planting guild within Zone 2 demonstrates the understory below the peach tree of French walking onions and comfrey. To enhance every growing area in Zone 1, this small 60-foot isolated area surrounded by the driveway is planted with Mexican sunflower, snow pea, cucumber, beans, a large section of strawberries, and elderberry. On the upper southern edge of the property is a bee house for the mason bees and other insects that may call it home. The birds use these reclaimed vinyl fence top post covers as nest boxes in the spring and early summertime. I drilled holes in the bottom of it in order for rainwater to drip out. I used reclaimed pallet wood to build this birdhouse and mount it high in the trees in the back of the kitchen garden to support the wildlife. Larger sticks and twigs from the mulch pile are piled up under the hazelnut trees to provide shelter for animals and insects.